Hashem, today's daf yomi is Sanhedrin daf membe, Sanhedrin 42. Today's daf is dedicated for Shemir for the Chayalim itself, the Shuhim and Yeshua for Am Yisrael. And it's Eis Sarah. We're going to start from 41b, 5 lines from the bottom. Gemara tells us we had a statement from Amar of Acha Bar Chanina in the name of Rabbi Asi in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. So the Gemara is going to have several more statements from Rav Acha Bar Chanina in the name of Rav As in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, and they all relate to, or at least the all except the last one relate directly to the concept of sanctifying the new moon. So we know that there's this concept called Kiddush Levana, where we make a blessing on the new moon, and the blessing is about Mechadesh Chadash and blessing God for being the one who renews the months. And it says Rav Acha Bar Chanina in the name of Rav As and Rabbi Yochanan Ad Kama Mevarchan Al Chodesh. And the way most commentaries read it is until how many days in the month are you able to recite this blessing of blessing God who renews the months? Some read it the opposite way. Only until what point in the month can you make this blessing? Meaning, when can you start? But the way most read it is up until what point can you recite the blessing? So the position is until the indentation of the moon becomes filled up. V'kaman, how much is this indentation of the moon? So now we have a dispute between Amar Rav Yaakov Bar Yidi, Amar Rav Yehuda ad Shiva. That's until the 7th day. And when that part of the month is filled up by the 7th day, that's when you can no longer recite the Kiddush Levana. Now, Daya Amri ad Shisha, so only up until the 16th day. You have more time. You have until the 16th day of the month when the moon is totally full. Mitravayo on the top of 42a, Mitravayo Rabbi Yochanan Sfirohu. Both of them agree with Rabbi Yochanan that's until the indentation of the moon is full, but Hav or Rabbi Yehuda is a position with Mahavik Yisra that the moon should be filled like the indentation of a bow, meaning to say a half circle, and Hav Mahavik Nafia, whereas Nadar of the opinion that it has to be totally circular, like a sieve, in order to not be able to say Kiddush Levana. So Amar Rav Acha Medivto Ravina Melivracha Tova Metiv, according to Rabbi Yehuda, who says you can only recite the blessing until it's filled like a bow, you should also still be able to recite the blessing, the one who is good and creates good, because the moon is still increasing in its light. So you should be able to recite the blessing of a Tova Metiv. Amarway, so Ravina responds, Atu Kichasar Mimevarchinon Dayan. When the moon is not full, do we make the blessing Dayan of the true judge, which is typically recited at a Vayarach Manoetzon? We don't recite that blessing then, so why should we recite a Tova Metiv? Deliver a Tova Metiv. So Rav Achmed Difta says to Ravina, why not? Deliver Chulu Travaino, so recite both blessings. Ravina responds, no. Even the Hainu Orchei Lomavarchinon. Since this is the typical way of the world, this is not something unusual that we recite a blessing on. So now, Amar Rav Acha Bar Chanina, Amar Vasi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Kol Mevarcha Al Kodesh Bismano Ki Umekabel Pnei Shlina. Whoever recites a blessing on the new moon in its proper time, i.e., before the 7th day of the month or the 16th day of the month, it's as though he has received the face of the divine presence. Because Ksiv Hachat says here, Achodesh Hazel Lachem, says this month shall be for you, which is this week's parsha. Ksiv Hasam, and it says by the splitting of the sea, where the children of Israel saw the divine presence, Zekili Vamel. This is my God, and I will glorify him. So when we make the blessing on the new month, that is in fact like seeing the face of Hashem. If the Jewish people were only able to see the face of their Father in heaven every month, that would be sufficient, because that is such a powerful spiritual moment. And it says Abaye, therefore we should recite it standing up, like we are greeting God. So therefore we should recite it standing up. Marim and Marzutra were older, and it was hard for them to get up, and so therefore their servants would stand them up and they would support them on their shoulders so that they could make this blessing while standing. Some say that they would actually mean that they would go outside, that since they weren't And so they actually go outside. And so some say that's the source of the idea that one should go outside to recite the Kiddush Levana. Amalei Ravachi, Rav Ashi, the Marava Mevarchi, there to Israel, they make the blessing, Baruch Mechadesh Chadashim. Blessed is the one who renews the new months, who renews the months. So Amalei, so Rav Ashi says, Hai Nashi Didan Nami Mevarchi. That is a simple blessing, and even the uneducated women amongst us could recite that blessing. Elokad Rav Yehuda, this is the blessing. Number Rav Yehuda, Baruch Hashem, Mamro Baruch Lakim. Blessed are you, Hashem, with his word created the heaven, to Veruach Piv Kol Tzavam, and with the word of his mouth, he created all the heavenly hosts. Chol Kuzman Nasalahem, he gave them a time and a place. Shelo Yishanu Takitam, they don't change their tasks. Sasam Musmechem. They are rejoicing to do the will of their Creator. Their works are one whose works are true, and the workers are true. Meaning to say, the hosts of heaven are true, and the work that they do is true. And to the moon, God said, "Shetischadesh ateres tiferes amuse baten." That he should renew every month teres tiferes, a crown of glory, for the amuse vaten, for those who are coming, the nation that comes forth from his womb, which is another name for the Jewish people. The amuse mine beten. It says, it's a phrase from Isaiah, and Rashi says that because from whence they were born, HaKadosh Baruch Hu carries them in his arms. And they will become renewed in the future, just like the new month, just like the moon. Be a glory for their Creator. Blessed are you, Hashem, who renews the months. So now we have another statement. The Rav Acha Bar Chanina says the name of Rav Asi, the name of Rabbi Yochanan, quoting the pasuk from Mishlei, Ki b'tach puvos, with their wisdom, Ta'asel Chamo Chamad, I'll make a war for you. Amar Rav Acha Bar Chanina, Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. What does this verse refer to? It refers to the wars of Torah, meaning studying Torah, working very hard to push forth the scholarship of Torah into the world. Who is going to have this? Somebody who has bundles of the Mishnah. Meaning to say, you can have all the brilliance in the world, but if you don't have the sources at your fingertips, like the Daf Yomi, if you don't have the Daf Yomi at your fingertips, how are you going to fight the wars of Torah? How are you going to be able to argue in the belly of scholarship? And in fact, Rav Yosef, Rav Yosef was called in the Gemara, the Mari Dechita, the master of the week, because he knew all the sources. And that's what he said about himself, Virav Tvuos, the one who has a lot of grain, has the strength of the ox. Verse at the conclusion of the verse in Proverbs chapter 14, verse 4. So now it says, if one says it was 2 hours, if one of the witnesses said it was 2 hours, and the other one said it was 3 hours, the testimony is valid. But if one says 3 and the other one says 5, it's disqualified. Amar Shimi Barashi. So he says, Lo shanu elashos, when we allow them to be off by 1 hour, only with respect to hours. One says it was before the sunrise, and one says I saw it after the sunrise. They do some material, their testimony is canceled. So the Gemara says, Pshita, isn't that obvious? Of course, their testimony will be canceled under those circumstances. If one says it happens prior to the sunrise, and one says after the sunrise, that's what it's one says in the middle of the sunrise, that's no good. So the Gemara says, Hanami Pshita, well, that's also obviously no good. So the Gemara says, no, Ma'al he might have said that it is good because the reason why they have such a distinction is the witnesses that said he saw it after the sunrise, he stood in a place that he had no basically clouds, and it was very clear, and there was nothing stopping him from seeing. And so therefore, so he thought it was after sunrise because the sun was beginning to go up, but really it was just the rays before the sun rose. Kamashman, we see from here, and he's saying, no, we don't say that, but the testimony is canceled. And afterwards, we bring one of the students in. And if one of the students says, you have to bring in the defendant. If one of the students says, I have a reason to say that he is innocent, then we elevate the student and we send him amongst the judges. For that day. Also, Ayom Masulo, just that day, he's not a permanent appointee to the court. We say, if what he's saying has merits, he never leaves from the court. He stays up there forever. But if he is no merit to what he's saying, we leave that student at least sitting with the court the whole day, because we don't want his assent to be embarrassing from him. If we're going to bring him down that day, I'll be embarrassed. So exactly. Explain this Mishnah. If there's nothing to what his words are, if he has no merit whatsoever to his claim, then we just leave him there for the remainder of the day. And if they find the merit on his behalf, we exempt him, we release him. Otherwise, we bring him to the next day. And the Mishnah said we pair them up, and then the judges don't eat; they eat less, and they don't drink wine the whole day. Yayin my time. Why don't they drink wine? Amar B'Yachar Bar Chanina, Amar Kra V'Laroznim. It says in the pasuk, for those who are the princes, a shecha. For the princes, there should not be alcohol. What's this pasuk referring to? According to Rashi, this pasuk is a reference to the rebuke that Batsheva gave Shlomo Melech on the day of the dedication of the temple. That was the day that Shlomo Melech decided to marry the daughter of Paro, and they brought in many different musical instruments, and he was awake the whole night. And the next day he slept until the 4th hour of the day, overslept. And the keys to the temple were under his head, and they weren't able to get in. And so therefore, they brought the Korban Tamid late that day, and they were all afraid to wake him until his mother came and woke him up. And so that's why she says, to the princes, to the rulers, don't drink the alcohol. Means to say, but the Gemara gives a different explanation. This refers to people who deal with the secrets of the world. The people who are dealing with the secrets of the world, they are not allowed to drink. Done in Elo Keneged Elo Achir. So if there's 36 to convict and 35 to acquit, you need 2 to convict. So then they argue with each other all night until one of the ones to convict changes his mind. Let's say they don't see anything. Let's say neither one gives in. Then we release him. So well, since in the end we're going to release him, why don't we just release him from the beginning? So they based in more vavim. We don't want people to go out with the court having reached an agreement. That's going to be disrespectful. It's not good for the world. Alternatively, Papa says, why are they adding other judges? Why don't we just acquit him at the outset? And if they're not successful, then finding a common mind, then release him. So Abai says to Rav Papa, Rav Yossi agrees with you. Rav Yossi says, just like we don't add on to a court of 71, so too we don't add on to a court of 23. At the end of the monetary case, we say nizdakin. Where nizdakin is related to zakin, like elder or wise. We say nizdakin at the end. We say at the end of a monetary case, the law has been made wise. We don't say this by a capital case. Mine is nizdakin at the end. What does this phrase mean? If you want to say this, it means that this law is very difficult. Rashi says zakin amok v'kosheh. You have to pay attention to it. It's a very hard law. Well, if that's the case, that's what it means. If coming by the way, we should say this by a capital case. That's where you need to look at it more. Reverse it. You say it by a capital case and not by a monetary case. Don't reverse it. Mine is dakin adin. What does it mean is dakin adin? It means chacham dina. It means we did it properly, and none of what it's not going to be reversed. And we don't say this by a capital case because even if once you vote to convict, maybe someone will find the reason to acquit and you'll look at the law again. Meisave, Gemara challenges this because we say Gadol Shabbat Dayanan Omer Nizdakin and Din. The senior judge said Nizdakin and Din. Now, if you want to say it means that we did it properly, that's why the elder judge does it. And if you say we have to look at it more, why does the senior judge have to say it's a very hard law? We have to look at it more. You're embarrassing him. You should have somebody else say it. Why does it have to be the gadol of the judges that says it? Nor says in. No, we want him to say it. Better he embarrass himself than that others come along and embarrass him. So he should get him out in front of it and he should say it himself. Alternatively, if he would say it's a very hard law that we need to look into, that's why you can't compare one who embarrasses himself to one who embarrasses others. To one who's embarrassed from others. But if you say it's a very hard law, which we did properly, will the senior judge praise himself? He shouldn't be praising himself. Others should praise him. So the Gemara says no. Shani Milsa de Bedina. This matter of the court is different. The Gadol Ramya, because it's the senior judge's responsibility. Tanya Gamro is a davar himachnisano son. Gadol Shabadayan and Omer Ish Poni Atazaka Ish Poni Tachayev. It's the senior judge's responsibility to speak and to say that the court is and to say what the court has done. So even though he's praising himself, it's his responsibility to speak out in that manner at the conclusion of a case. Sanhedrin Allah Hayubotkin. We will return to this glorious chapter, the fifth chapter of Sanhedrin, which is called Hayubotkin, and now we start the sixth chapter. Nigmar Adin. Once the case has been decided, once they've ruled it, Motzino so Wasoko. We remove him to give him stoning. Now, obviously, there are four types of death the court can do, and stoning is just one of them. But since stoning is the first one, meaning to say, since stoning is the most severe, and it's also the first one discussed by the Gemara, so therefore we are going to be Motzino. So that's why Rashi says that we start with him. Now we continue to learn more about the stoning. So of course, skill is the first one mentioned in the Mishnah Mentes. That's why we start with here. The place where you stone the person was outside of the court, meaning to say it was a little bit distant from the court, because it says, with respect to the one who cursed Hashem in Leviticus, in Emor, you have to take the one who curses out of the camp and thereby stone him. And when you take him out, one stands by the entrance to the court, Sudar and the other one, he has a flag in his hand. Visus, and then there's another person who's on a horse, who's farther away from the entrance of the court, so that the horse could see the guy with the flag, and he could stop the execution if it needs to be. If somebody comes forward while they're about to execute the defendant and says, I have a reason why he should be acquitted, then Hala, Mainif Besudar, and the one who's sitting by the entrance of the court waves the flag, Vasus Rats, Umamidin, and the horse runs and stops it. Even if he says, I have a reason why I should be acquitted, I myself have a reason. So we bring him back to the court. Even 4 or 5 times, as long as he has something, some content to what he's saying. So now the Gemara says, it's just outside the court, and that's it. Means say it's not farther away. But we have a specific amount that needs to be far away. Vatanya Beis Eskila Yochutz Shalosh Machanos. It needs to be 3 machanos away, not just a little bit outside the court. Umar says, yeah, that's correct. Inkadika Amr. So it has to be 3 camps. You have to take them outside 3 camps. Now in the wilderness, the 3 camps were the Machan Shechina, which is also known as the divine presence. That's the base of Mikdash in the time where the temple was standing. There's the Machane Leviah, the Levites' camp, which is the Temple Mount, and there's the Machane Yisrael, which is Jerusalem. So we say you have to take him outside the 3 camps, outside Machane Yisrael. So Avdina on basis skill chutz lebezin, but if the court itself, excuse me, inka the Gemara the ka'amris, that which we said chutz lebezin. Now, if Kamina, the distinction is the Navak Beidina v'Yosef Chutz Shalosh Machanos. Let's say the court is sitting outside the 3 camps. Avdina Beis Eskila Chutz Lebezin. We still have to move the Beis Eskila, the house of the stoning, far away from the court. We don't want it to appear to be a court of murderers. Or we want to have more time, go through the process. So basically, well, it takes time to get him to the place of execution. Maybe someone will come with a reason why we should be saving him. Menani, Mili, what's the source for this idea that the base of skill is outside the 3 camps? The Gemara says, the Tana Rabbanon, we learned in the Brayso, it says to Mekawal Mechutz Machaneh. It says in the Pasuk, take out the one who cursed Hashem outside the camp. This is called the Mekawal. So, which means, Chutz L'Shalosh Machanos, take him outside all 3 camps. The Gemara says, is it outside all 3 camps or just outside 1 camp? So it says here by the Mikao outside the camp, and it says by the bowls that are burnt, i.e., the Paralam Davar Tzibor, the communal guilt offering, and the Par Kohen Mashiach, and the Kohen's guilt offering, that both of them are not eaten, and their offerings were brought on the Mizbeach, and the rest they took outside the 3 camps and they burnt them there. So Nemar Kam Mechutz Machaneh, Nemar Parma Misrafim Chutz Machaneh. Malo, and just like by the bulls that are burnt, Chutz L'Shalosh Machanos, it's outside all 3 camps. Avkam by the Mekawel, it's Chutz L'Shalosh Machanos. Outside all 3 camps, and it's the same law for all others who are stoned. And how do we know by the Param it's outside all 3 camps? It says by the bowl of the Kohen who is anointed, you should take his bowl, the entire bowl outside the camp. And that means chutz l'shalosh machanos. It means outside 3 camps. And the Bryce, I told me, chutz l'shalosh machanos, maybe it's only outside 1 camp. It says by the communal offering, it didn't need to say that. You're like, it already says you burn it just like you burn the bull of the Kohen. So it's it means to say not you have to take it out of 2 camps. By the Trumas Hadeshin, it says you have to take the ashes outside the camp. It says that you need to take it outside the camp. It doesn't need to say it. Meaning that you should burn the bull of the Kohen in the place where you spill the ashes. So if that's the case, we know it's outside the camp. So that's Litelo Machaneh Shlishis. That's to say you take it outside 3 camps. So the Gemara says we could have learned Chutz Machaneh from another place, and there refers to only 1 Machaneh. We learn if you slaughter something outside the temple, Kodshim, that you're chayav kares, and there it only refers to 1 camp. That's if you slaughter a korban outside the Beit Hamikdash, one just outside the Beit Hamikdash, you're chayav. So maybe here also, by the base of skila, it's also 1 camp. By the Makal, maybe it's 1 camp. So the Gemara says, no, it's more likely, better to learn it from the bowls that are burnt. Shekain, Hotzei al Mechutz Machaneh, Machshir Mechaper, because the Makal is similar to the bowls that are burnt and not to the Shlutei Chutz. It's similar in 4 areas. By both of them, it says the word Hotzah, and it doesn't say that by Shlutei Chutz. Both of them, it says al Mechutz Machaneh, In both it says the word el, which does not appear by Shlutei Chutz. Both of them it says Machshir, but both of them we have this law that taking it outside the camp is a hechsher to fulfillment of the mitzvah. So unlike Shlutei Chutz, where it's the lack of fulfillment of the mitzvah, it's an avera umechaper, and both of them are serving as an atonement for Israel for the sin, unlike Shlutei Chutz to the sin. Other Abba says, and when Shlutei Chutz Avei will be left. She learned that from Shlutei Chutz. Shekain Adam Chote B'Neshama Pigol, because the Mekal is similar to the Shlutei Chutz in 4 areas. By both of them, it says with respect to a person and not a bull. The Mekal and the Shlutei Chutz is a person who does it. And unlike the bowls which are burned, it's mentioned the bowl that you burn it outside. Chote, both of them it's a sin. By the one who is the Mekal, they are the sinners. And the power is not a sin. Neshama, by both of them, he's taking his soul outside the camp. He's chayav for a soul. And the one is Mekal, you take his soul outside the camp, and the one who's Shochei Pafutz is taking the neshama of the behema outside the camp. But by Param, they were killed inside the camp. And last is Pigol, that by Mekal and the Shlutei Chutz, we don't have the concept of Pigol doesn't apply. But by the Param Nisrafim, the concept of if they slaughtered, which is Pigol, if they slaughtered with the intent to burn their limbs outside the camp, there's no Pigol. The message no machmir machshir adiflay. It's better to learn out the machshir from machshir, i.e., by both of them we have this law that is a tanai, is a stipulation and a hechsher to fulfillment of the mitzvah. And that's why it's more likely to learn it. And so we'll pick up, Rav Papa is going to give a different source for the idea in tomorrow's daf of 3 camps, but we'll stop here. Shekoyach to everybody.
Thank you.